Well, the topic today is that of the melodic line. The melodic line. Let me ask you a question about the song that we just sang. What part of that song was melody and what part was rhyme? What part was melody? Actually, nobody was singing melody. We all sang parts. You were singing melody. Maybe tell us what the melody, how the melody goes. Okay. And then the parts go how? Chakutumai. I can't do it. Damuya su wema wa kutosha zangu kuziosha. So tell me this, what dictates what? What determines everything else? What determines everything else? The melody determines everything else, right? If you're drawing a line, which is likely how you're drawing it, if this is your melody, if that's your melody, and everything else is rhyme, they dictate, right? They're all going to be dictated by that. Another way of saying that is that doesn't really work like that, right? With music, you're going to have different notes. But the melody of the song determines whether everything else that is being said is clashing or not. It's a melody that is dictating the tune of the song from the very beginning to the very end. There might be many other things that are going on, but you can be able to crystallize, to boil down that song to just a few notes. A melodic line is the kind of thing where I could just simply tell you a little piece of it and you know the song already, right? I could say, let's sing the song that goes, and you know what song we're singing already, isn't it? Maybe I should test that. What song is this? With more confidence. There you go. In Christ alone, right? Or what song is this? I'm thinking of very contemporary songs. And I'm like, those ones will not work. How great thou art, right? If I chose instead to sing a part, not the melody, right? If I chose to sing a part, you would have a much harder time to find out what song that is. What we're saying is that each song has a crystallized, a melodic line that captures the gist of that song. Even though that song has many other parts to it, there is an essential little part of it that captures the heart of what that song is. Same as with a song, each book, in many ways, has a melodic line. Each book has a core message to it. For a passage, the music notes are the words of the book. When you read through them, they will have a melody to them that will make sense. Just as every song has a unique melody, every book of the Bible has a unique message. Okay? Just as every song has a unique melody, every book of the Bible has a unique message. If you're walking through a book, what you're saying is you don't just want to walk through a book and end up with random lessons out of that book. Chapter 1 was heading this way, chapter 2 is heading to the other direction, chapter 3 was saying this other thing, chapter 4. And when you finish the book, you're like, hey, that was such a beneficial book. We learned so many new different things out of that book. It's saying each book of the Bible that you preach has a unique message. It has a Genesis, Exodus, that's Ecclesiastes. Each book of the Bible. So that when you articulate something, you're articulating a truth that is actually a unique message that is found in that particular book. The work that we're going to be doing today is helping us learn how it is. Learn strategies, we'll do some exercises, show you some examples, you will do this, and then together we'll try and actually come up with the melodic line for the book of Ecclesiastes. They say that the best teachers are the best listeners. As you're reading through a book like Ecclesiastes, you don't just want to be coming up with the things that you want to say. You want to be reading that book, listening out very keenly for what that unique message is. So, question. How can one best uncover the melodic line of a book? What strategies can we use to do so? Yes? Bookends. Yes? That's top and tail. Uh-huh.
Repeated phrases and words.
Repeated phrases and words. Hope you're writing all these down. So these are strategies. So we call it top and tail, or bookends. Said repeated. Ideas and words. Someone say something else? I thought those three things. You said bookends. You said repeated words. I didn't hear somebody else. But someone else said something. Yeah. Where the author tells you a purpose statement. Those are normally the best. Any other strategies? If you're trying to find out what the unique message of that particular book is. Sometimes the structure of the book will really help you with that. Right? Just see the way in which it is arranged. Pastor Musimi helped you see the ways in which every passage has a structure, and the structure reveals the emphasis of the passage. Sometimes, some books are a complete mess when you try and outline them. They're going to be really, really difficult. First John is classically hard in that regard. But some books will be so logically and systematically structured that just by looking at the flow of it, it will tell you, this is what I'm emphasizing. But what do you need to do with your book so that you can be able to see any of these things? There's one thing that is unavoidable. For you to be able to get, yes sir, read it. Read it and reread it and reread it and reread it. There are no shortcuts. Maybe when you have a purpose statement, you can get off easy and actually accurately be able to discern the purpose statement of that book, the unique message of that book, without having necessarily to have read many times. But for most of the other things, you have to read and reread and reread. And as you're doing so, the harmony right, will fade to the back and you will start seeing that melody a whole lot more clearly. It will stop feeling like it's just noise and so many different things. And you will start hearing, I can hear the in all these places. It's the same thing that's going on from the beginning to the end. Yeah, pastors, before we even dive in and describe these other strategies, I want to really exhort you to this one thing. You'll find that there's many strategies that you have been equipped with for being better expositors of the scriptures. I can assure you this from my own experience. Nothing you try and put to practice out of everything we have taught you holds more benefit for you than simply reading through entire books of the Bible repeatedly. I know. That's actually kind of it's a funny statement. It's a funny statement because it's the kind of thing everybody can do. You know, which should not surprise you because that's the Bible and it's meant for everybody. It's not meant for the special technical experts who have, really mastered and are really unique in this and that. You will derive so much more out of the scriptures if you develop the habit of not just reading short portions of scripture, but especially when you're preaching through a book, when you try to master a book, reading through the entire book in one sitting, or at least reading through exceedingly long portions, like Isaiah, right? Reading through exceedingly long portions of it in one sitting and doing so repeatedly. When it comes especially to the melodic line, the unique message of the book, nothing is going to be more important than that. And so allow me to exhort you again. You want to identify the books that you're going to be preaching and start your prep much earlier. If, let's say, you want to be preaching through the book of Habakkuk, you don't want to start doing your in-depth study of the book of Habakkuk the week before you preach your first sermon in Habakkuk. You want to identify, I want to preach Habakkuk. I will likely start preaching Habakkuk in June. And so I'm going to start reading through Habakkuk, maybe for my devotions, in March, in April. By the time I'm coming to the book of Habakkuk and I'm preaching chapter 1, you have given yourself ample time to have read through it many, many times. How many chapters in Habakkuk? Two. I mean, that one you can do 3 of them in a morning. One sitting. Next day. Again. In a week, 7 times. Maybe even 14 times. I'll tell you what, by the time you're done, you've done it 10 times. You've done it 15 times. You've done it 20 times. You are seeing things without having touched a commentary. You are already seeing so much that's there, that's available to you. I see this is where it's going. I see this is what he's doing here. He says this here. He also says it here again. So I want, of all the things we're going to talk about, that sounds so complicated and technical and wow, that's so CST-ish, that we get especially this element of be a deep reader of the scriptures. Strive to grow in being a deep reader of the scriptures. And the way you do that is by reading and rereading. Somebody tell me, how can you read well? How can we develop that art, apart from reading and rereading? As we are doing that, how can we read deeply? Throw some things at me that will help me with knowing how to go about this. Some examples. Yes, Laban. Shout. Remove all distractions. Okay? So find a time when you are exclusively committed to this. That's good. Something else. Yes, Stano. Read aloud. So good. That's actually one of the ways I remove the distractions. Yeah. Sorry?
Different Bible versions.
Different Bible versions? That's excellent. That just grows your understanding of the very things that are being said there. Yeah.
Engage most senses.
Explain. What do you mean by that?
Like you're reading and you're listening.
That's good. So read and listen at the same time. That's good. Yeah.
Also, be patient when reading.
What do you mean by that?
So that you get yourself to all the time you want to finish so quickly.
So read patiently. Read carefully. Don't just read to get to the end of that and be able to add that ka stick. I do mine with 2 sticks. And you're like, there are only 3. And I'm trying to get to 7. So just be able to get and add another ka stick. Let's not do it that way. So another hand here. Yeah. Write it down. Wow. Write down the book. Copy it. Ooh, that will really help. I've never done that actually. That's actually, the kings would be asked to do that, isn't it? Yes, Tim?
Periodically stop and ask yourself, what did I just read?
So good, right? Ask questions like, what did I just read? Are you able to synthesize, to summarize what it is that you just read? So that's useful for devotions, for example, when you're even having to do the basic questions of what attributes of God have been articulated here. Just those questions help you start looking at the text differently. And you start, seeing these other things that are emerging out of it. Yes, sir?
Use the time you're bored waiting for something.
Okay. So make use of as much time as you possibly can over the course of your day. That's very good, right? I like asking questions as I'm going through the text, so I'll jot down things on the side often. One of the most beneficial things I have found in reading deeply is creating my own cross-references within the book itself. So just if I'm reading through the book and I come across the word sufficiency, 2 Corinthians, I come across it again in chapter 2. I mark it again. I go back to chapter 1 and I write sufficiency, chapter 2, verse 2. I come across it again in chapter 3. I go back again to chapter 1. I say, this word shows up in chapter 2, verse 2, and chapter 3, verse... it's there as well. In chapter... I go back again and I write again, and I add. And by the time I'm done, I have my own little, within the book itself, cross-reference of all the ideas that have been repeated within that book. I found that really, really useful. Anything else that would help us with reading deeply? Yeah.
Talk about what you're reading.
So good. With someone else?
Yeah.
Yeah. So share what it is that you're reading. It's interesting how much you have to clarify. Things seem much clearer in your head until you start speaking about them. And you start speaking, you're like, there's actually, I'm not quite clear on that, and you're having to streamline it, and it becomes clearer. Yeah. And I would say you want to avoid reading other people's views. At least this has been my experience. You want to avoid reading other people's views of that book until you have finished that first portion for yourself. You've said, I want to read through this book at least 10 times and develop my own understanding of it before I welcome external voices. For me personally, if I start off with someone else and especially read someone really smart, I'm done. All I can see is that person's thoughts, right, in the text. And it feels like it's limiting me. So it limits the amount that I can actually be able to derive from the book, because I started off with an answer as opposed to coming with a question, what is this book's unique message? And I don't think that's arrogance or pride. That's simply wanting to be a student of the word and do the hard work necessary and be able to reap the satisfying reward that comes from doing that work, right? As opposed to getting the answer, and then now you're just kind of going to find out where that answer actually has been. However, after you've done all of your work, I do exhort you and encourage you to find some good resources to check your work against. right? I don't want to encourage us to being these unique mavericks who have all come up with our own unique message of each book of the Bible that does not look like anything else any other Christian in all of church history has ever heard of or seen. It's actually a really useful thing to take what you've done, and oftentimes, every single time, the work I have done and the conclusions I have come to are going to be affirmed in many ways and are also going to be improved in other ways. And then I can be able to move forward with that. Okay, I really sat there for a long time because I want you really to go home with that, knowing that you can get to the unique message, especially by working hard in growing an ability or cultivating a skill of deep reading. Deep reading. And that's what you're trying to do when you're doing repeated reading, right? You're trying to keep your eyes open to observe ideas that have been repeated, words that have been repeated, etc., etc. Okay, if we don't know what the entire book is about, we may miss the point of a specific text. When the reason why this melodic line, this understanding of the unique message of the book is so important, is actually when you don't get what that is, the very specific passage you are handling might become a whole lot more elusive. So the melodic line is a really useful interpretive tool for each passage that you're actually interpreting. That's a really interesting statement I just made. It's not to say simply that the entire melodic line is repeated in each passage. No. That's not what I'm saying. But it's to say that each passage of that book in some way contributes to that unique message. It is beefing it up in one way or another. It is serving it in one way or another. And for you to preach your unique, your specific passage correctly, you want to do it with an awareness of how it relates to the unique message of the book. In that way, you will find that you're preaching through a book, again, is not random, completely disassociated sermons, but it is actually a building of one edifice, a painting of one glorious picture. But when you step back, you see that unique message of that book clearly articulated. We must be careful not to just preach the melodic line. Rather, we must preach the point of our text in relation to the melodic line. Your people will get exhausted pretty quickly if all you're saying to them is that same melodic line Sunday after Sunday. Pastor, surely, see, tulishasikia hii last time. It was powerful the first time. It was okay the next time. But tuko chapter 3 peke yake, and you're still telling us again the same thing. We're not preaching the melodic line. We are preaching the point of our text in relation to the melodic line. Sometimes a passage will serve the melodic line. Sometimes it will contrast it. Sometimes it will focus on just a particular part of that melodic line. Okay, let's articulate some of these other strategies a bit more carefully. Top and tail. One of my professors used to say that oftentimes when you're trying to get into a house, the key is normally hidden either in the front under the mat or at the back under the mat. That's what we mean. Who used to say that. And that's a good place to check when you're reading a book, right? You're starting off by checking the very beginning and the very end, and it's going to be giving you a good clue of that reality. Go to Romans. Let's just go to Romans quickly and see how that looks like there. Someone read Romans chapter 1, verse 5. Hand up for that. Hand up for that. Hand up for that. Umechoka sasa. Oh, sorry. More. And then Philo, if you could read chapter 16 and verse 26. More read loudly. And then Mr. Philip. Yeah. Chapter 1 and verse 5 of the book of Romans.
To whom we have received grace and apostleship to bring about obedience of faith for the sake of his name among all the nations.
Okay, Philo.
Romans 16:26. But has now been disclosed and through the prophetic writings has been made known to all nations according to the command of the eternal God to bring about the obedience of faith.
Okay. What's the similarity between these two? What phrase was repeated? Obedience of faith. So, at the top of Romans and at the tail of Romans, a repeated phrase, obedience of faith. Actually, if you spend some more time, even back in chapter 15 of the book of Romans, you're going to see the phrase obedience of faith actually repeated a few times. So from the top and tail of the book of Romans, it's clearly not just a book about the gospel, but a gospel that alone can bring about the obedience of faith. The work that God has accomplished through Christ brings about, for both Jew and Gentile, a certain kind of obedience. It's a new kind of obedience. It's the obedience of faith. So if you're going to be summarizing what the main point of the book of Romans is, and you neglect the idea of obedience of faith, you're going to be missing out on a lot. Think about this. As you think about the book of Romans itself, it articulates the reality of sin and our complete inability to do anything. I.e., you cannot obey God. You really can't. And then it speaks about Jesus and what he has accomplished alone. And then it shows us how in our union with him, we who are dead in our trespasses and sins, chapter 6, we are now caused to be raised together in newness of life. And then it shows us that now, actually, because we're united to Christ, we can live in a way that we could not live before we were united to Christ. Because we're no longer slaves to our sin. It shows you how the kind of obedience we're speaking about is not the obedience of the law, chapter 7. No. The law no longer has that operative authority over your life. It shows you that actually the way you live your life is one who is in Christ, chapter 8. It's a new life, chapter 8. That's what it looks like. And this is all God's doing. 9 to 11. But then 12 onward, this shows you what that obedience of faith actually looks like. This is what this new life in Christ looks like when it is actually lived out. See what I'm saying? Top tail. And you start looking inside, you find, actually, you know what? Maybe that's not how I think about the book of Romans. I think about the book of Romans a whole lot more like a systematic theology. And so I just approach it from a justification by faith alone, imputation of chapter 5, and I have my systematic theology categories in the book. That's not bad at all. That's useful. But if you're going to try to preach through the book of Romans, the top and the tail has already really equipped you to be able to speak about it in a way that sounds different and unique from even other books where justification by faith alone is also found, like the book of Galatians. So that the way you're speaking about Romans doesn't sound exactly the same way as how you're speaking about the book of Galatians. So top and tail as a useful tool there in getting to the heart of it. We won't look at these others because of time. 2 Corinthians, I told you the word sufficiency shows up a lot of times. Ephesians is one of my favorite ones. We could have done a lot of work here with repeated words. The church will show up everywhere. I'm not sure that there's another book that repeats the phrase in Christ as many times as the book of Ephesians, but all those would be really useful in helping you get to the heart of what that book is about. Now, exercises. Let's do the melodic line for Ecclesiastes together. This is a daunting task we're about to embark in. We see if we can be able to develop the unique message of the book of Ecclesiastes by putting to work some of the tools. Repeated ideas in the book are going to be really important for us. We're going to try and use that tool and also look at the ideas that are in the beginning and at the end. Could we start off with some practice? We'll give you a few minutes. So, with your neighbor, read Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 1 to 11. And then read Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13 to the end. And let's just throw out some big ideas about what this book might possibly be about. Okay. Tell me, after all the deep reading you've done, what is the author of Ecclesiastes writing about? I'm not looking here for a fully developed melodic line. I'm looking just for key ideas. What do you think? From just what you've read, we're going to do some more work, but from just what you've read at the beginning and at the end, what is this book about? Somebody throw out. Yes, Pastor Musimi. Chapter 12. No, just the last 3 verses. Yeah, the end of all the matter, 13 and 14. What's this book about? Church membership. There's some 9 marks guys inside here. Don't mess around with them. What's this book about? Yeah, Jared. What is vanity? All things. So his scope of thinking is pretty big. He's not just looking at one topic, he's pretty broadly describing or thinking about all things, all of life. It's good. And coming to the conclusion of it being vanity. Somebody else? What's this book about? Yes, Peter. Okay. So he's thinking of life under the sun. Okay? So scope again is pretty big. It's all of life. It's all things. Right? Even before the conclusions, it's a fairly wide scope. I saw 2 other hands. Yes?
It's about the whole beauty of man being here.
Okay. So there seems to be a very, not exclusive, but like an all-inclusive type of, attempt of a study that he's trying to make here. Okay. So life under the sun, it's trying to make sense of all things. You see there at the beginning of that chapter, the order of things. Verse 7 of chapter 1, all streams run into the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, they flow again. All things are full of weariness, a man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. So there's a certain thing that he's grappling with. There's a futility, almost, of all of life under the sun that he's pondering. This is what he's chosen to make as his area of study or concern. Anything else here that you think is useful? Yes, Pastor Musuntu.
The work of God is for all generations.
Okay, where did you see this? Okay? Yeah, so it's not just looking at one generation. It's not something unique to himself, but he's thinking of all mankind, of all time. Right? Okay. Let's keep pressing on. Trying to think about the unique message of the book of Ecclesiastes. What repeated words? Going to use the tool or the strategy of repeated words or ideas, which I think is the most powerful one in the book of Ecclesiastes. What repeated words or ideas should we be looking for? And then I'll want specific verses to back this up. Okay? What specific words in your reading of Ecclesiastes do you feel like have been dominant to the point where they should be considered? And we won't take all of them, but I'll be happy to take, it's an exercise. So throw out a word for me and then see if you can back it up. Yeah.
Vanity.
Sorry? Vanity. No prizes for that one. So vanity, right? That's a big one. So the word vanity. Do you want to make some suggestions of which passages you've seen vanity in? So that's chapter 1, verse 2. Okay, guys, I want verses. Chapter 1, verse 2. That's not enough. Shout out. 1 verse 14? 1 14, 1 8. 2:19. 2:1. 2:11. 2:17. 2:26. 2:26. Did someone say something else? 2:19. 2:23. 5:10. 4:7. 4:4. 4:44. It's all vanity, you know? Okay, we'll stop there. Vanity shows up 34 times in the book. You never know, but that might be useful, right? It might be that this, all of life, all of time, life under the sun thing that he's studying, one of the things that is coming down to, or up with, is that the conclusion of his study is that life is vanity. It's going to be quite important to articulate what we understand by the word vanity. Anybody wants to throw out a phrase there for me? Meaning of vanity? 34 times, describing life under the sun. It'll be really important for us to grasp it. Yes, Busuntu. Smoke or vapor, very, very good, right? So one will describe it as this life under the sun that generation after generation endure is a vaporous thing. It is a vapor of vapors. It is so hard to be able to contain it, capture it, articulate it. There's something difficult about it. When you're trying to just kind of make it this predictable, determinable thing, it has an elusiveness to it. Okay, which is what's frustrating for him as he's considering life under the sun. Okay? That's useful to keep in mind. Higher. Any other words? Vanity is one big one. Yes, Brother Oscar. Wisdom. Okay. So wisdom is a big one. Where do we find this in the book? 113? 116? Did I say 118? 1:18. 2:9. 2:3. 12. 2:13. 26. Yeah. Enough work, enough work. Wisdom will show up 29 times in the book. 29 times is quite a few times for a book with only 12 chapters. It seems like of all the different things that he's going to talk about, wisdom seems to be one of the big ones. Now, you've done some study in the book already. Tell me what he's saying about wisdom. What is he saying about wisdom? And I want you to back this up, because you're studying a book here. Yes. Wait, Mr. Anjo here. Wisdom is better than folly. So he keeps saying that over and over. Like day is better than night. Right? That's like this established thing. There's a limit to it. The wisdom is better than folly. It's not quite everything. Okay? Yeah. And what passage of the Bible did you go to, of Ecclesiastes, did you go to show that? Find it as you're finding it. Yeah.
Wisdom is not enough to make sense of vanity of life.
Okay.
How God works.
Okay.
The passage, Ecclesiastes 8:16.
Okay.
I applied my heart to wisdom to see the business is done on earth, how day and day or night. And verse 17, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun.
Okay. So the study is of all of life, all generations, all things under the sun. And this phrase, vanity, vapor, is the word that he uses to describe that life. There's a vaporousness, right? A vapor nature or character to that life. And wisdom, though good, though better than folly, cannot be able to tame that life, contain and control that life. It's of great use in life. It's of great benefit in life, but it has its limitations. It cannot quite, to the very end, control all of it. Okay? Anybody else with another portion on wisdom that says something contrary? So it's good. We'll have multiple portions of it's good. Yes, sir. Yeah.
See that even one wisdom can also be corrupted. Wisdom cannot be corrupted.
Yeah. One with wisdom can be corrupted, or with wisdom can be oppressed. Yeah.
So there seems to be, on one hand, he's talking about the vanity of wisdom, but then, like in verse chapter 1, verse 16, it says, I have God great wisdom, surpassing all the children before me. In my heart that great experience of wisdom and knowledge, that I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness. Before me, I can see that this also is striving after the way. So there's on one hand, there is this wisdom that, though good, is still vanity. And then he also talks about a different kind of wisdom that is good. So in chapter 2, from verse 26, it says, the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. This is after he has talked about vanity, wisdom, and vanity store. But there seems to be a different kind of wisdom that is good.
Yeah, so you have two choices. One choice is to ask whether there's a bad wisdom and a good wisdom that he speaks about in the book. And the bad wisdom is what's vanity. And the good wisdom is the one that's not. And I think what you'll find is that the scope of his study that he has extended to absolutely all things, within that scope, the description that he uses for everything that he has mapped out is everything is what? Everything is vanity, right? So he has mapped out the complete horizons of all things, and he will use all manner of descriptions of it. And the vanity of it, I think if we use the word, if we think of the word vanity as something evil or sinful, if we articulate it that way, there's a way in which we will not be able to put God-given wisdom as something that is it will almost sound like it's bad. So he's not wanting to say that. And yet I think that's why it's so important to articulate his understanding of vanity as something vaporous, as something hard to fully master at the end of the day. Hard to completely control at the end of the day. And then be able to say that wisdom in itself, even though it is so good, is unable to control all things. There's a question here. Yes, sir. You need to speak much louder, brother.
He also says in verse 16 of chapter 7,
Yeah.
he cautions us not to be overly wise, but why should we want to be?
Yeah. So those are funny sounding phrases. And chapter 7 might be one of the ones that really goes hard into describing wisdom. And it will say it in chapter 7 especially as both something that's very good. I think that's the passage that our brother Chris was breaking down for us. And it says it, how did he describe it? In its excellence at the end there. It's better than 10 rulers of a city. So just wanting to show you how gloriously good wisdom is, right? It's better than 10 rulers of a city. And you're supposed to pause and go like, wow, hey, that's a lot. That's like a lot of power, a lot of control. And to say wisdom is actually better than that, right? And then there was another passage that spoke about it again as with this glow, right? A shining of the face. That's almost deific, deity-like language of the glory of God. And it's supposed to go like, whoa, that's like really, really good. So the author of Ecclesiastes is not casting shade on wisdom in any way. He's showing us, however, its limit. One of the interesting things I think you'll find is if you think about the words of Job's friends, those words, if you're being honest, of course you're being honest. You're always honest, guys, right? Those words sound very wise. If you're just reading through those words, you go like, wow, like where's the error? I'm not sure where the error is. This is just sounding like wisdom, isn't it? That's why the book of Ecclesiastes exists. It's not that what they're saying is necessarily wrong, but you can tell they're trying to take what they're saying and make it as though it is sufficient to answer everything. They really think that it is, if you do things this way, Proverbs basically, that should be able to give you the full answer of life under the sun. And that's where their folly was. Because even after you've spoken of all that wisdom, there's still something else that lies outside of the grasp in this life under the sun of that wisdom. We need to keep pressing on. Another word. Hands everywhere. Dennis. Wealth. Good stuff. Give me 1 or 2 references to wealth. You know what? Don't. Because of time. Wealth shows up 10 times, right? Back there. Fear God. It's kind of important. Shows up how many times? Oh, sorry. A reference to fear God. I should be the one telling you that. 8:12. 12:13. So it does seem like it shows up especially in the critical parts. Huh? So it's not just volume, but also the really critical areas, especially at the end if he says, let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Okay, if you're going to say conclusion of the whole matter and say fear God, I think it gets in, even if that's all it was getting. Right? But it will show up a few other times as well. Okay, so yeah. Under the sun or under heaven. Reference to that, brother? Chapter 1, verse 3, 1:9, and 28 other times in the book. So under the sun, very many times as well. Okay, higher. There's another word here that we haven't yet touched on. Death. Did you see death? Did you see death? Someone, find me the references to death. Let's find references to death. References to death. Yes, sir. 7:1. Okay? So this is where, just if I kind of shortcut this whole thing, this is where you'll find if you search the word death, I think it shows up only 3 times in the book. But then the idea of death, it's highlighted so many different times. So in my own notes, I use blue to kind of capture the idea of death. So 1:11, there's no remembrance of former things. Nor will there be any remembrance of latter things yet to be among those who come after. So he's thinking about, I'm gone. It's those who come after now. 16 of chapter 2. For the wise is as the fool. There's no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come, all will have been forgotten. Verse 18, I hated all my toil. Why? Because I must leave it to the man who will come after me. It will be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. It's a time to be born and a time to die, beginning to the end. All are from dust, end of chapter 3, and to dust they will return. Who can bring him to see what will be after him? Chapter 4. And I thought the dead, who are already dead, more fortunate than the living. So it goes on and on. All the blues that I'm coming across here are just death, death, death. It's a book that's filled with references to death, right? I find something more bitter than death. No man has power to retain his spirit or power over the day of death. Neither will he prolong his days like a shadow. So death is everywhere. Question, what does death do? So we've said about wisdom, for example. So the scope under the sun is everything, generations in, generations out, right? It's what the study is. We've said of wisdom that it's certainly something really good. The book of Ecclesiastes does not contradict the book of Proverbs. You could not overstate that. You cannot overstate that. What you have is this great gift to you called the wisdom books that are supposed to help you develop, cultivate an understanding of life as a Christian. And you will find that that understanding of life as a Christian is completely contrary to the wisdom of this world. And so all these books are giving you key pieces to build the foundation of what you call the wisdom with which you approach life. And the wisdom of Proverbs is a key one. Don't be a fool. And everything else that's inside there. But it is not enough for life under the sun. Ecclesiastes is adding another piece, and it is telling you with this other piece that it's adding that when you factor in death, when you factor in death, it makes the description of life under the sun something that's vaporous. It's not as predictable, as masterable, not by riches, nor by wisdom. Nor can it be escaped with acts of foolishness, giving yourself to pleasure or to laughter or to... This is life under the sun. I've already kind of said it. Anybody wants to add something else to death? What role does death play? Why is the author talking about death so much in the book of Ecclesiastes? To be wrapping this up. The most? It levels the playing ground. Okay, guys, we have our keywords, and we've kind of described them. I want you to take a few minutes to draft a melodic line for the book of Ecclesiastes with what we have just come up with. Okay, let's hear it. Give us the best you've got. You're among friends. You don't need to worry. Yes, sir. And your name one more time. Dennis. Daniel. Yes, Pastor Daniel.
Well, it's a try.
It's a try, yes.
Because we will all die, wealth and wisdom under the sun are all vain. Therefore, fear God.
Okay, say that one more time.
Because we all die, wealth and wisdom under the sun are all vain. Therefore, fear God.
Okay, because we'll all die, wealth and wisdom under the sun are all vain. Therefore, fear God. What questions would you have to that first? Anything for that? That's pretty good. I think it just needs one correction. Yes, Raymond.
It appears to pit wisdom against fear.
Yeah, that's the only concern there. It pits wisdom versus fear of God, and that's not quite how. So that's great, but this is what you do. You have to be humble enough to write down your first draft. Because if you don't have that humility, you will never have the final answer, isn't it? So you start off with that, even that, and you say that, then you go like, yeah, but here wisdom looks like it's being pitted against fear of God, or wisdom seems like it's pointless, and it doesn't quite speak about it like that. So you keep working. It's very good first try. So that's a rough first draft, yes, sir. Didier?
Fear God, for although wisdom is exceedingly valuable, it is insufficient for the vanity that is life under the sun.
Okay. Wow. You want to see that again? Some of us want to write.
Fear God, for although wisdom is exceedingly valuable, it is insufficient for the vanity that is life under the sun.
Okay. How'd you guys like that? Let's keep that in mind. Yes, Dr. Mbandi.
Fear God, for all under the sun is vanity. Fear God, for all under the sun is vanity. Okay. That's quite concise. And that would be, if somebody said that, would you be able to say, that's the book of Ecclesiastes, not the book of Zephaniah? Isn't it? So that's right? Ecclesiastes. Really, really summarized. Useful to even flesh it out a bit more. That's really good. Any others? Yeah.
God has designed death and meaningless of life, so that we live in the fear of Him and in His.
Wow. So you've added something though there that we haven't talked about. God has Designed. Where are you getting that from? That's not on our list. Come on, you're allowed to use the Bible, not our list, eh? You're allowed to use all of the book of Ecclesiastes. That's really, really powerful, brother. So what he has said there, I think it's really useful. I wasn't thinking we're going to get there, but I just want to highlight that this idea of God has designed, or God has decreed, or God has given, shows up across the book as well. Okay? So if you want your references for that, I have just a couple. I didn't write all of them. I have 224. Maybe someone read those as we're going through them. Quickly, because we are out of time. Now we are eating someone time. 224. Someone read 224. Somebody else read 313. Who 313? Brother? 313. Somebody else read 518. 518. 518. Somebody else read 519. Okay, read 518 and 19. Okay? Somebody read 62. 62, 62, 62, 62. 62, Isaac. 714. Gumi. 11:7. Matoke. Yeah, read.
Ecclesiastes 2:24. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God.
Is from the hand of God.
Read that. Also, everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man.
God's gift to man.
5:18 and 19. Behold, what a way seem to be good and fitting is to eat, drink, and find enjoyment in all the joy in which one falls under the sun, the few days of life, this life that God has given him. This is his lot. Everyone also thinks God has given wealth and possession and power to enjoy them and to accept his will because of wisdom. This is the gift of God.
God has given, this is the gift of God. Yeah.
6:2. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires, yet God does not give him power to enjoy them. But a stranger enjoys them, his vanity, triggers evil.
God determines those things. I said 11, so I'm seeing you looking at it. It's not 11:7. Oh, okay, I must have written that wrongly. 11:5, thank you.
As you do, how through the path of the wind or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God in the maker.
There you go. So it seems that there's something that's quite key in the book as well of God has determined it. So the fear of God that's being articulated, that fear of God is not just showing up at the end, it's showing you that all the activities of man, his wisdom, his wealth, cannot compare to God's role in determining what happens under the sun. God has established it. There's a time and a time for. God has established it. We are time-bound. He is outside of time. We should not think that even by the maximum application of wisdom that we can be able to dictate exactly how our lives will play out. We are called instead to live our lives under the sun as those who are recipients of that which God has given to us. Okay. I had my little attempt here, an earlier one. At an early point when I was drafting this, my first draft was reading something like, those who contemplate what comes after death, fear God, and are thereby delivered from the vanity of life under the sun. That was a first draft. A much later draft became something that sounds a whole lot more like Andy Matoke's. So since I'm the one who's teaching, I can be able to award points. And I choose that one. And you want to say that one more time?
God has designed.
I don't mess it up now, because I've chosen it. You need to make it sound good now. God has
As designed
Yeah.
that death and the meaningless of life into life so that we can live in wisdom and fear.
Okay. We get the point. Brothers, as every song has a unique melody to it, every book of the Bible has a unique message. And getting that message is going to help us to be faithful with preaching each and every section of that particular book. Thank you very much. I've taken more of your time than I should have.